The Premier League returns, and Arsenal's first mission this side of the international break is to go and get all 3 points down on the south coast. Bournemouth are our opponents. They'll provide a stern test, and we'll have to navigate this fixture with a number of fitness issues. Mikel Arteta has been speaking to the media ahead of this one. We'll touch on all the key points from his press conference. I'll share my starting 11, a prediction, take some of your thoughts from the live chat, and more. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Let's fucking go, guys. Hey everybody, how are you? Hope you're all good. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday so far. The Premier League is back, baby. Just one more sleep until Arsenal take to the field again in Premier League action. We'll be facing Bournemouth down at the Vitality Stadium. Never an easy place to go. I really like what Andoni Iraola has done at Bournemouth, just kind of generally speaking. And so I respect them, and I'll always go into any game with them, home or away, thinking that Arsenal have to be somewhere close to their best, believing that Arsenal cannot afford, essentially, to, rest on their laurels or get complacent with the fact that, Bournemouth might end up in the bottom half of the table. That's maybe where they'll end up, I don't know. But you can't look at Bournemouth, the name, and say, well, that means that this is a given and it's a result that should be a foregone conclusion, therefore go into it with a bit of arrogance or overconfidence, complacency, if you like. You can't afford to do that. The Premier League landscape and the football landscape has changed. Like when I was growing up, teams like Leeds United and Sheffield Wednesday and Bradford City at a point, and lots and lots of these clubs, you'd look at them and you'd go, yeah, they're solid Premier League clubs. Coventry City had a decent team once upon a time. And nowadays, you kind of look at clubs like Bournemouth, if you're of sort of my generation or older, and you go, well, they can't be a good team because Bournemouth isn't a particularly powerful name in the footballing world. And you can say the same of so many. You can say the same of Brentford, for example. And I'm not picking on those two clubs. I'm just making the point that the kind of traditional ideas that you have in your mind about certain football clubs as you grow up may not be valid later down the line. And Bournemouth are a prime example of that. When I was a kid, Bournemouth were nowhere to be seen when it came to the top tier of English football. And yeah, they've had their ups and downs, and they've been in the division and out of it again and come back into it. And I'm not saying that they're a club that we shouldn't be going out there to beat and shouldn't be confident of beating, but it's very easy to get kind of sucked into the name Bournemouth and go, well, we're the Arsenal and there's no reason that this should even be a concern for us as a fixture. But every game in the Premier League is tough. Every game is demanding, and none more so than after an international break. I always think the build-up to games after an international break is almost always dominated by fitness talk, and particularly in our case, given we've got so many players whom there are question marks over. 7 players, I think it was, that were not spotted in yesterday's training photos. And let me just be clear on something with regards to that. The club do that on purpose, okay? The amount of accounts I've seen on social media going, oh my God, X wasn't in the photos, or Y wasn't in the photos, or what does this tell us? Does that mean that X player is unavailable now? Guys, the club do this on purpose. They want to keep the opposition guessing for as long as possible. It's why you turn up in the press conference and you hear from Mikel Arteta and you sit there and you think, we're going to get all the answers now. And he gives you very vague answers. He gives you enough to maybe try and read between the lines. But he doesn't definitively say Saka's going to start, for example, or Timber's going to start at right back. He won't do that. Mikel Arteta has never done that. And so to go into these things expecting that is crazy. And the meltdowns that come from Mikel Arteta just simply repeating what he does every week, which is keep his cards really close to his chest going into a fixture, I just can't get my head around it. I can't figure it out. Mikel Arteta has been speaking to the media earlier this morning. You can watch the entire press conference over on Haters TV, on YouTube, or anywhere else that has it. And thankfully for me, I did watch it, but to save me scrolling through the transcript in order to give you exactly word for word what Mikel Arteta had to say on some situations, The brilliant Charles Watts has broken it all down for us on Twitter. So if we go over to his post that he put out a little bit earlier on, there was a question asked, of course, as you'd expect, around Bukayo Saka. And he said, we are hopeful. We have a session this afternoon. Let's see. He talked about it not being a significant injury, which I think we kind of all guessed was the case. Just looking at it at the time, I remember saying on here, the day after, that I thought it was probably just a bit of tightness. And, you know, Bukayo Saka is old enough and experienced enough now to kind of know when he doesn't feel 100%. And in that scenario, in that environment, in that fixture, I think he was absolutely right to hit the deck, put his hand up and say, guys, I need to get off. And the club looked at it, decided to take him away from the international camp, bring him back to London Colney, treat him. And Mikel Arteta said during this press conference that he's done a few things in training as well. So I am 90% sure that Bukayo Saka is fit, ready and available to start this game. He was asked about Kai Havertz. He said if he trains well today, he has a good chance. I think he's another one that's going to be in. On Martinelli, I think there's a bit of a doubt around this one. Mikel said yesterday he did a bit outside. Today will be another step and we will understand if we'll take the risk. I've said it already this week, but I think the mere fact that Arsenal allowed Gabriel Martinelli to stay with the national team rather than calling him back says that, you know, they were pretty confident that this wasn't anything too significant and not anything that's going to keep him out for a period of time. The fact that he's done a bit on that injury, on that problem, is obviously a good sign. He might get a breather though, and I'll explain a little bit later on why. I think Martinelli's really important. We've talked a lot about him recently and how he's sort of come back to a really, really good level after a bit of a disappointing period. But I just think with Martinelli, we do have the options to rest and rotate. Like, we could use Trossard on the left. You could bring Merino into the side, for example, which we discussed a little bit yesterday. You could play Raheem Sterling too, who, listen, whether you think he's good enough or not, whether I think he's good enough or not, still at this stage in his career to start games regularly for Arsenal, it's clear that Mikel Arteta trusts him. If he didn't, he wouldn't have brought him back to the club. So there's no real need to take a gamble on Martinelli, I don't think. Not in the same way that you probably need to push Bukayo Saka if he's almost there but just slightly shy. The way that you need to push Kai Havertz if he's almost there but just kind of slightly shy of where you want him to be in an ideal world. So I think that Martinelli is one that I probably personally wouldn't take a gamble on unless I was absolutely sure he could play. Thomas Partey missed the international break through illness, but he is fit, according to Mikel Arteta. He's confirmed that he'll be available for this one. On Martin Odegaard, Mikel Arteta said, look, he's not fit for this game, and the next week will be crucial. So we're going to get a real good indication, an idea of how close Martin Odegaard is to returning to action and availability over the course of this next week. I've always said, guys, that Liverpool is the aim. I'm not saying that he starts against Liverpool, but I've always looked at that game on the horizon and thought that's the one that they'll be aiming to get him back for. Mikel Arteta did say that he's expecting him to be back before the international break, which falls in line with what I'm saying right now. And so, yeah, I'm confident that he's not too far away. He was also asked about Ben White, Jurrien Timber, Zinchenko. Not so worried about Zinchenko, but I have been worried about White and Timber this week because to be without both of them, and Tomiyasu now, who Mikel Arteta confirmed during this press conference, by the way, has picked up another problem. He did say, I don't expect it to be a long-term thing, but he did confirm those reports that were doing the rounds earlier this week and the week prior. He says on White, Timber and Zinchenko that they are quite close, the three of them. Today we have to try and push. Hopefully we'll have some positive news and we will have some players back tomorrow. So I'm confident that at least one of those two right-back options will be available to us. And I think we need a proper full-back down at Bournemouth. I don't think this is a game where you can throw Thomas Partey in there. I mean, we would have had to had we been desperate. And we still might have to because I don't know for sure that those guys are going to be available. But to get away with it at home to Southampton is one thing. To then take that on the road to Bournemouth is a completely different thing, and I think is a huge, huge ask. So I'm hopeful that one of those two right-back options will be back for us. That's really, really important, I think. I do want to go over to the live chat box, see what you guys are saying. in response to what we've already discussed. I got a lot of heat for being late today before I was even late, which is a new one. That's incredible. What else have we got? Just having a look at some of your comments. Damien Kelly says Bournemouth play a good style of football. They are dangerous. They are. And I watched this really, really good tactical analysis video on Bournemouth just the other day, actually. And it talked about the way that they like to attack, the pattern of play in which they like to build up with through Andoni Iraola. It highlighted some of their key players. I think Evan Nilsson, who they've signed as a centre forward, he's going to come good eventually. It is early days for him. Not had the greatest start, but it is early days, as I say. I think Symeou is someone that's been really, really impressive for them in recent times. So he's one we got to watch out for, assuming that he is, of course, fit and available. The other one, or the other thing I think that we need to watch out for, and I don't want to bore you with all the details of this tactical analysis video because I'm sure most of you are not interested in Bournemouth's patterns of play, or at least won't be anyway after sort of tomorrow evening. But one of the things that I really kind of took from watching that video was that they like to try and expose the half spaces. And I know we talk about half spaces a lot nowadays, and we talk about them being a real key kind of battleground in modern football and in the Premier League in particular. But they try to, using fullback runs and using midfielders who go sometimes from inside to outside, they try to pull fullbacks away from their centre halves. And then they try and utilise those spaces. They're spaces that they really enjoy attacking in. And I know a lot of teams like to attack in half spaces. We do too. But the way that they go about trying to maximise that space is really, really interesting. You will sometimes see midfield players from a central area make a kind of overlap of the winger in order to try and attract people with them and then create the space for the winger to go into in that half space area and cause problems. So the way they do it is just slightly different to the way that we like to try and create those spaces, and it's something to watch out for going into this game. It's going to be really, really interesting. I'm sure we'll bring you all the stats and details around this game. I'm also going to share with you guys my starting 11 prediction, all the rest of it. I do want to, just before we go into that stuff though, ask a few things and let you know a few things. First of all, if you haven't done so already, guys, please do leave a like on the video. I can see that based on the number of people watching, we're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of likes. So if you could like the video, it would be really, really helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We're approaching 37,000. We're not a million miles away from that. So if we can get there pretty soon, then we can continue our charge towards 40,000 on YouTube. And that doesn't include all the lovely people that listen on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. But I've got something to ask of you too. Please do leave me a review. That really, really does help, in particular on those two platforms. In terms of upcoming content, we've got loads coming your way over the next sort of 48 hours. We've got the match day reaction pod for our Patreons. That will be out tomorrow night. So make sure you're signed up over there. If you're interested in that, visit Chronicles. I'm telling you the wrong address. Visit patreon.com/the Chronicles of Aguna. That's the one. Head over there, sign up. You'll get access to the match day reaction pod plus an In Focus episode, which is currently in the oven cooking at the minute. We've also got the full review of the Bournemouth Arsenal game, which is available to all our listeners. That'll be coming to you on Sunday morning, so make sure you've got your notifications turned on for that one. There's also a mailbag episode, which is going to be dropping on Saturday morning on the main podcast feed. You'll be able to access it here on the YouTube channel as well if you're watching us live right now. But yeah, it's an extra bit of content for you guys. We don't normally put anything out on the morning of a match day, but I asked for some questions a few days ago, and I've got some really, really good ones that have been coming through from a combination of X, of the YouTube comments section, of the Patreon chats. And I'm really, really looking forward to answering some of those. I say answering them, I'm not the oracle. I don't produce all the answers to everything, but I quite look forward to digging into some of those topics and sort of thinking out loud and sharing it with you guys on some of those subjects. So lots and lots to come over the next 48 hours or so. So make sure your notifications are on and all the rest of it. Okay, Let's talk Bournemouth versus Arsenal then as a Premier League fixture. It is a game that's been played 14 times in the past in Premier League history. Arsenal have won 11. There have been 2 draws and just the 1 Bournemouth win ever in Premier League history. So Arsenal have a really, really strong record going up against this team. I talked about it right at the start of the pod. Do not let history and your preconceptions or previously developed opinions of Bournemouth fool you into believing that this is an easy game, because it's not. If you look at the recent meetings between the two sides, Arsenal won 3-0 at home at the back end of last season. We won 4-0 at the Vitality Stadium. Had a really good day that time. We also beat them twice in the 22-23 season. We won 3-0 at the Vitality. Remember, Saliba scored that cracking goal. And of course, we beat them 3-2 in dramatic fashion last March. And then if you go back to the Boxing Day game in 2019, there was a 1-1 draw there, so that wasn't ideal. I think that was the game where Olivier Giroud infamously celebrated an equaliser when everyone was saying, you should have been trying to get on with it to go down and score the winner. I remember that. If you look at the form guide so far, Arsenal have won 3 of their last 5 in the Premier League, 2 draws coming against Brighton and Manchester City. Hardly bad results. I mean, I'd have preferred it if it looked like 4 wins from the last 5, because I think that Brighton game we really ought to have won it. But for some questionable refereeing, we probably would have. Bournemouth, a bit of a mixed bag lately. They've only won 2 of their last 5. They've had 3 defeats. But when you look at who those defeats have come against, Chelsea, Liverpool, and then obviously Leicester City away probably won't be seen as acceptable by Andoni Iraola and his staff. But to lose against Liverpool and Chelsea as Bournemouth is no disgrace whatsoever. If you look at where they are in the league right now, they sit in 13th position. Mikel Arteta's Arsenal are in 3rd at the moment. We've won 5 of our games. They've won 2. 2 draws each. And we, of course, are one of a few teams that remain unbeaten, whilst Bournemouth have lost 3 times this season. We average 1 goal per match more than them at the moment. And they average nearly 1.5 goals in terms of what they concede. We're at just under 1. We've kept 3 clean sheets this season, and according to these PremierLeague.com statistics, we create significantly more big chances per match. If you look across the 2 teams in terms of top player stats in the Premier League alone, Kai Havertz is out there in number 1 when it comes to goals. He's got 4 so far. Antoine Symeou, who I mentioned, has got 3 in the Premier League, which at this stage is really, really impressive. Assists, Bukayo Saka leads the way. He's head and shoulders above everyone else with 7. To get to the second place across these 2 teams, you have to go down to Lewis Cook and Gabriel Martinelli, who have got 2 apiece. So Bukayo Saka has 5 assists more than anybody else across these 2 sides. When it comes to tackles, Lewis Cook is right up there, joint with Thomas Partey and William Saliba as well. So those are some of the statistics going into this game. But again, I look at Bournemouth. Every time I watch them, I'm impressed by their patterns of play. I think they're front-footed. I think they play the game the way that I like it to be played. And I recognise that they're more than capable of causing us problems. I don't think we should pay them too much respect, i.e. I think we should go there and take the game to them and make sure that we impose ourselves in the way that we know we can. But I also expect there to be difficult periods for us in this game. I don't think it's going to be from minute 1 to minute 90, all plain sailing and Arsenal cruising to this really comfortable victory. I think there will be tough periods. And, I think when you look at what Andoni Iraola has been able to build there, after a shaky start, let's be honest, I was at the game at the Vitality last season, and you'll remember it was the game where Kai Havertz was given that penalty, wasn't he? We really needed him to get off the mark, and Mikel Arteta did exactly that. Well, I say Mikel Arteta, he denied that he did that. He said it was the players after the game when I personally asked him about that. But yeah, I mean, that was the lift-off point, I guess, for Kai Havertz. We all looked at it, and I know people were upset about it at the time and said, pity penalty, why are you giving Kai Havertz a penalty kick? Imagine what would have happened if he missed that. And I get all that, but he just needed that lift-off point. And I remember after the game listening to the Arsenal fans singing 60 million down the drain, Kai Havertz scores again and all of that. That really took off that day. And it was a real, I think, turning point in his Arsenal career. So it's a fixture to him that will mean quite a bit. It's a game that Andoni Iraola's side did okay in, I thought, last season, but, at points anyway. I know they got battered in the end, but at the first 20 minutes of the game, they were really, really good, I thought. And I came away from that game thinking, and I remember listening to someone on the radio ringing up and saying, "Oh, we got to get rid of this manager. We're not winning games. We're not going to get any points like this." And I remember thinking, based on what I've just seen in the flesh in that first 20 minutes, you'll be fine under Iraola. And over time, that's proven to be the case. Right, let's take you over to my trusty little tactics board. I want to start sharing with you guys my starting 11 for this one. So as I said to you, I believe that one of White or Timber will be fit. So that would be my right back choice. I don't ever want to move away from the Gabriel Saliba pairing unless I really, really have to. In fact, we're going to preview the game as time goes on, and we'll do it, I'm sure, in good time. But I wouldn't mind one of them getting a breather in the game against Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League. I think, look, there are a lot of Champions League games that you can't afford to take lightly. In fact, I don't think you can take any lightly, really. But Shakhtar at home feels like one with Liverpool on the horizon, given that we got people coming back from the international break with problems, that we probably could make a few changes and get away with it. I'm just building up my 11 for you here. I think we're going to stick with the kind of 4-4-2-ish system that we've seen Arsenal use recently. I think that despite Mikel Arteta saying he needs to train, that Kai Havertz will be fine. I think that Leandro Trossard deserves to continue. He was impressive again in the international break. I think Martinelli, if there's any doubt over him, as I said already, he's not one to take a risk on. So I'll probably play Sterling, actually, from that left-hand side. And on the right, I'm going with Bukayo Saka. Now, there are a few names that I considered throwing in here. I think that, obviously, if we don't have one of our right-back options available, then Thomas Partey will probably drop into that right-back position. And then I'd imagine that we'd probably bring in Mikel Merino for his first start. I think he's almost there, Mikel Merino. Talked about it yesterday in terms of I think he's there fitness-wise. I just don't know that, Mikel Arteta will want to mess around too much with what's been quite successful recently. If that was to be the case, if Merino was to come in, we could play with a more sort of traditional shaped midfield in terms of what we were doing prior to this kind of 4-4-2 adjustment that we've made. So there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of options despite the injuries, if that makes sense, just because we've shown so many faces in recent times. We can play in so many different ways. Sterling is an interesting one for me because I know a lot of people will say, well, take Sterling out, throw Mikel Merino into the midfield and put Leandro Trossard on the left, and then it looks a bit more like the shape that we've become accustomed to over recent years. So take Sterling out, move Trossard over to the left, stick Havertz in at centre forward, and then the argument would be bring in Mikel Merino. Oh, what have I done there? Click something. No, you guys can't see it, just me. There we go. Then you'd bring in Merino, and then a lot of people would argue that Merino can play the Odegaard role. Partey can sit there. You could even put Rice on the right-hand side and put Merino on the left because he's left-footed if you think that gives you slightly better balance. That's an option as well. And the more I look at that, the more I think I quite like it. I think what happens at right back is going to be really important because we know that Partey's fit. We know that Partey didn't go on international duty. We know he's fresher than a lot of these players. So you do think that whatever happens is going to be dependent on what we need him to do. If he can go into that midfield, then I've got no problem with us doing this, which would be, just for those of you listening, Raya in goal, White, Saliba, Gabriel and Calafiori across the back. You could play that midfield trio of Partey, Rice and Merino. Merino's got to be ready by now to start a game. Saka on the right, Trossard on the left if you don't want to risk Martinelli, and Havertz through the middle. But Sterling could come in, Merino could be left out. We could play that 4-4-2 system. There's a lot of different options. There's a lot of ways of going about this. Me personally, for this game, I would stick with the 4-4-2 thing, just because I think it's worked really well. And I would maybe start Mikel Merino against Shakhtar Donetsk in midweek, where the intensity is going to be a bit lower. It's a Champions League game against weaker opposition. I think that's probably a better game to throw him in for. I know we paid a lot of money for him. I know we bought him partly because of his experience and know-how, and there shouldn't be any issues around him being able to handle that type of game. But yeah, that's a better starting point, I think, for Mikel Merino. So I would go with this. So let me just repeat that for those of you listening. To be clear, Raya in goal, White or Timber at right back, depending on which one of them is fitter. Saliba and Gabriel at centre back, Calafiori on the left. I'd play Rice and Partey in midfield, Saka and Sterling either side of them, and then I'd have Trossard up top with Havertz playing that in-between role, that second striker role that he's been playing so effectively recently. So that's what I would go with. Mikel Merino just about misses out. I'd leave Martinelli out through not wanting to take any risk, given that he's had a problem whilst on international duty. And that is my team to face Bournemouth this weekend. Okay, just looking at the likes. Guys, look how many of you are watching. We've only got 46 likes on the board. Come on, fix up. Hit the like button. Doesn't cost a thing. It's completely free. If you've got any questions, because I'm really pushed for time today, I've got TalkSport 2 this afternoon, so I do need to head off to central London. If you've got any questions, don't put them in the live chat. Hold them. When the stream ends, go in the comment section below, and I'll include those in the mailbag episode that will be dropping for you guys on Saturday morning. I'm going to leave you, though, with my prediction, and my prediction is that famous old result, because I think this is going to be a tough game. I think we're never quite at our best when it comes to the return after an international break. It's always tricky. It's always tough when you got so many players going, when you got players who there are fitness concerns around. So yeah, that's why I don't think that this game is going to be a walk in the park, and therefore I've gone with that famous old scoreline of Bournemouth 0, Arsenal 1. There we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Don't put them in the live chat. Put them in the comments on the YouTube video once the stream ends. That way I'll be able to pick them up and include them in the mailbag episode, which I'll be recording tonight. That will be available to you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. It's Bournemouth versus Arsenal. The Premier League is back, baby. We need to get back to winning ways. We need to pick up where we left off and charge forward. We got a Champions League game to come in midweek where I think we can afford to rest some players. I know a lot of you are saying this is our chance to rest X or Y player. I disagree. I don't think this is a game that you can mess around too much in. So I would look at resting some of those players in midweek, give them a whole week off until that big game at the Emirates next weekend against Arne Slot Liverpool. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great Friday and up the Arsenal. Goodbye.